I am being watched. Welcome everyone to MailFuzz TV. I am Peter, and today I'm going to be talking about Person of Interest, Season 3, Episode 20. It is called Death Benefit. So spoilers for the episode as always. This is an interesting one. We're at that stage of the season where we've only got a few left. We actually have more than I thought we did, because this one goes to 23 episodes for some reason. So we got 3 more still. But we're at that stage in the season where we're kind of ramping up to the end game of what the season is. And I think what really caught me off guard with this one is how it kind of escalates very dramatically into some really cool show defining moments in the back act of it, like the last chunk of this, where it kind of becomes this debate about whether or not the machine might actually want the team to kill someone. Was very, very good. And it wasn't bad before then. It was a solid episode with, the usual dry humor that you expect from Reese and Co. Some fun just because the person of interest is a congressman, which is a little bit different than normal because it means he's got security all the time, makes it harder to get close to him. Reese ends up creating danger by shooting at him so that he can pose as a Secret Service person. It's a whole thing, right? It's a whole, typical person of interest, except for the fact that it never really kind of reveals, okay, what is the danger here? Like, what's going on? Eventually, it turns out the Vigilants are also following him, and the team incorrectly assumes that they're here to kill him. And that's kind of teased in like one of the little B plots as well, which is that Uncle Nolan is talking to the Senator character, Senator Garrison. I was never going to remember what his name was, but the Senator, you know who I'm talking about. Um, he's pitching to him that Decima's Samaritan project can be the replacement for Northern Lights. And despite him saying, oh, that'll never get passed through, Congress or whatever anymore because of the backlash to the idea of this thing even existing. But Uncle Nolan says, oh, don't worry, opposition to it in the system, will be silenced. We'll move the obstacles out the way, which makes it sound like we're going to kill anyone who might vote against it, right? That's what it sounds like. So it's very easy to sort of think that along with the Team Machine, that they're there to kill the congressman. But the big reveal in this episode is that they're actually also there to protect him, right? It's not until they end up kidnapping one of the Vigilants, no, not Vigilance, sorry, Decima. I'm getting my bad groups mixed up. If I've said Vigilance at any point, I didn't mean Vigilance, I meant Decima. Did I say that before? I don't think I did, but if I did, I meant Decima. Vigilants aren't in this episode. They're mentioned once or twice, but they're not in this episode. But when they get this guy from Decima kidnapped, and they basically get into his phone, and it turns out that their mission is to protect him as well. It's like, oh, wait a minute. So he's going to vote the way that Decima wants them to. Okay, that's interesting. Where are we going with that, right? So that presents a delay. But at this point, we're quite far in the episode, so unless this is going to be more of a straight-up two-parter, like, where's this going then for its final hurrah in the episode? And I wasn't really sure where it was going, and it's Reese that ultimately turns around and says, the congressman's in danger, right? But it's not Vigilants who are the threat. They're not the ones trying to kill him. Maybe the ones that are trying to kill him really is us. Right? That he always says that. That's your dramatic ad break line, is we are the ones that are here to kill him. And Finch immediately argues against that, but Reese says, hey, is it possible in the direst of circumstances that the machine might actually want us to kill someone? And Finch says that it is possible if it foresees someone doing something very bad that'll kill a lot of people, then it might ask us to do that, right? And technically, one of the things that Reese brings up when Finch is arguing against this is that all of the relevant numbers, what do you think's happening to them when the machine sends the government after them? They're all being killed, right? So it's not like the machine's hands are clean as far as, and not that I'm saying that the machine's done anything wrong here, but like, it's not like it's not also sending people to assassinate other people if the outcome of that assassination is, clearly the good, right thing to do. But I love this debate. I love this because Finch is really against it. Reese basically is ready to believe it. And one of Reese's motivations, which is heavily inspired by this season so far, is he brings up Carter, that there's a cost of not acting, of not doing the thing that we're supposed to do, and it led to the death of someone I care about, that we care about. We should intervene here if we have the chance. And one of my favorite things about this is that when they're debating and Finch decides to try and go convince the congressman. And it's kind of fun finding out that the team are here to kill him, because that's initially what the congressman thinks when they first show up. So it's actually a little bit ironic that by the end they might want to actually kill him. But when Finch tries to convince this guy and he sits down and talks to him, he says, hey, you're working with Decima, you've agreed that you're going to pass this bill or whatever, and you shouldn't, right? You made a little bit of money off of it by getting inside stock trades, all that sort of stuff, insider information. Look, this is bad. You've been an advocate in the past against these types of systems. Please do not let this go through. He tries to plead with them on a sort of moral level. That does not work. In fact, he kind of argues against it, and the congressman says, look, the people want to be protected. They just don't want to know how it's happening. So he kind of like comes down morally against what Finch is saying. So then Finch even tries a second tactic. He says, you know what? Okay, you profited from Decima, and you're going to help put this through. How much? Right? Different carrot. How much will it take? I will pay you what you want. And we know Finch can probably afford whatever number he's going to say. I'll pay you what you want, and you stop it. You do not let it go through. And I love that. I love that he starts with the moral high ground argument, and then he goes to just trying to pay him off. Because, hey, it's better than murdering someone. Like, that's... I love the layered attempt of Finch trying to talk this guy down so that it doesn't have to come to killing him. And the congressman says, hey, look, I might have made some extra money whilst helping put this bill through, or promising to put this bill through, but that's still just me doing my job. I'm not going to be paid off. So no, I'm not, like, and he makes it clear that he's not going to, like, back down or stop this bill from going through. He's going to let it go through. And Finch is, of course, distraught by this. He goes back to the others, and he basically pleads. And what is absolutely the moment of the episode is Finch getting emotional as he pleads with the other two, that being Reese and Shaw, to not kill this guy. And I think what I loved about this is there's a few elements here that I love about this debate. In the moment, his performance is fantastic. Him getting emotional and saying that he can't cross this line and whatever. And I love the counter arguments, because Reese has a point. All those terrorists that get killed, like, for the relevant numbers, are still being killed. This isn't wildly different to that, right? If the machine is seeing that this guy's decision to help pass this bill is going to lead to something catastrophic, arguably more catastrophic than even like a simple terrorist act would, then maybe the right thing is to stop it right here, right? And then make sure it can't happen. So I love that the arguments make sense, and I love that there's no clear right answer, because there's still, like, room here. It's not like the machine calls in and says, yeah, I definitely want you to kill him. There's still interpretation here to consider, that maybe this is not actually what the machine wants them to do. Maybe the machine just wanted them to be aware of, like, who's at the center of this, and to see where the threat's coming from, and see how it's going to gain, how Decima is going to gain access to all the government surveillance systems and completely fulfill what it's possibly going to become. You know, there's lots of things that it could be doing instead. And up until now, the machine has been very anti-killing when it's not necessary. The machine has stopped Root from killing people. The machine does not want unnecessary death. It's a big part of the machine. And it's part of why I think we as the audience latch onto it, is being this sympathetic entity of some kind. But what I also love about Finch's argument here is that when he's saying, no, like, I built the machine to protect people, not kill people, and as much as there's some flaws in his argument, as they point out, the terrorists definitely get killed when they're getting dealt with. This also kind of fed back into, like, Finch's speech from earlier in the season about how, like, as much as you build the machine, it was when he was convincing Reese to come back on the team, right? When they were after the plane episode, at the end of the plane episode, where he's like, the idea is that there'd always be a human element on top to make a final decision, right? That regardless of how good the information from the machine is, there's always the human element to make a judgment call at the end. And to me, this felt like the raw test of that. This is the ultimate version of, the machine has given us this number, and it seems like it wants us to kill this person, but Finch is stepping in saying, no, we're human beings, we get to choose if this is the right thing to do. We're the human element here. This felt like it was tying directly back in to that conversation to me. And him pleading, getting a little teary-eyed, it was making me well up a little bit. But I also love that I didn't see Reese as being villainous in this scene by wanting to go through with this. I understood why. If anything, I logically agreed with Reese and Shaw. And Shaw, like, steps in at one point because Reese asks her to. And she's basically, look, I really like saving people. Like, I used to kill people all the time. I wouldn't have thought twice about it. But I've really liked saving people this last year. And I've been doing that, trusting the machine. So maybe we should still trust the machine. So she still kind of comes down on Reese's side. And it leaves it on this like fade to black moment, and we sort of like jump ahead to them on the run from the police and all that. Shaw takes a hit. And because Finch specifically said, if this is where we're going, I might have to, get off the ride at this point, that Finch might abandon Team Machine if we go through with this. But of course, the reveal at the end of the episode is that they didn't. He's alive. The congressman is alive and calls the senator and says, hey, I'll get that bill put through if you want to pursue this Decima thing. And they seem to make that agreement. And the episode ends with two things. One, Finch seemingly vanishing from the other two. Now, admittedly, in the moment, because we haven't had the reveal that the congressman's alive, I read that as, oh, he is getting away from the team because he morally has a problem with what the team is doing now. But in hindsight, because we know that the congressman is alive, I now read that moment as he's getting away from those two, because Finch, once this machine turns on, once Samaritan has control, the first target they're going to ask for is him. He is going to be the most dangerous person to be around, and I think he's protecting the others. I think that's kind of the choice he makes there. And they do it in a really sort of dramatic way, where he's literally looking up at the street sign. I mean, he's looking up at the camera to look at the machine effectively, but like, there's literally two one-way arrows on the street sign going two different directions. So they milked this for all the drama they could. But that's how the episode ends, is with Uncle Nolan asking to find Harold Finch, and we see their machines start to spin up and look for him. And maybe Finch is very good at covering his tracks. Maybe he knows where he can go off the grid and just be away from any evidence of where he is. You imagine that he's had contingencies in place to just disappear at any point. If anyone can do it, it would probably be him. But I like this last like 5-10 minutes of the episode feels super like big. It feels important. It feels like it's starting to pay off a lot of like just ideological debates that we've had on the show, and what different characters see the machine as, and how much they trust it, how much. And I think that was the other thing I really liked about the Finch debate, actually, talking about how like we can't just follow it blindly. And this kind of ties into him saying there has to be a human element involved. But it kind of made me think of Root a little bit, and how Root just treats the machine like God, right? She just listens to the machine, whatever it says, she follows without question. It's devout. And I think here, as Finch is making his argument, it really felt like he was throwing out the idea, if not like in actual dialogue, but certainly in subtext, that we can't just follow it, without question. That it'd be unhealthy to just always accept it as gospel, whatever the machine says. That it's healthy to always question and consider that we're doing the right thing, that the machine made the right choice itself. Right? And that's important. And that's important. That's a good lesson for everything. No one on Earth should be treated as like just always right no matter what without question. Everyone should have to be able to explain why they're doing something. Everyone should be held accountable for what they're doing. And this felt like, to me, like we can't just trust the machine because we assume that it's always right. There has to be some level of check and balance even with it, especially if it is more of an entity, if it's more alive than perhaps Finch even originally gave it credit for, then even more so, much like any human, it should be questioned sometimes. So I love this. Like no one should have so much power, and that's really the danger of Samaritan, is that the people who wield it can do whatever they want. They can hunt down their enemies. They're not just hunting down dangerous people, they're hunting down people that disagree with them, that get in the way of their ideals and goals, that try to fix the system, fix the political system so that only the things they like get passed through, so that they all have all the power. And to be frank, all of this, what I'm saying in the last 30 seconds, feels even more relevant today in 2025 than it did when this aired. And it's only a decade old at this point, give or take. But it was almost eerie hearing the debate of why Samaritan shouldn't be brought online and the danger of it. So Yeah, which is basically just me saying that the show is tapping into some real world problems and real world fears, in a way that's different to what I usually talk about, which is the idea of like talking about humanity, talking about what makes a living life form, a life form and all that, and I just it's such a well written show that I was finding so much weight in this debate by the end, both just because of how it relates to real world stuff and it feels relevant for that reason, but also just because of everything the show is set up in these debates and these ideas and how Finch views the machine and views the information and how he uses it. How Reese views things, how Reese is maybe motivated a little differently now, post Carter, than maybe beforehand. How Shaw views this stuff. Uh, all super, super fascinating stuff. Also, let me just double check the name here, but I'm pretty sure the congressman, I recognized him as Kevin McAllister's dad. It was, yeah. I was just checking. Just in case I was wrong, just in case it looked like him and wasn't actually him. It's kind of funny how, obviously, a lot of actors who are, I wouldn't even say were prominent in this time, because it's only 10 years, like they're still prominent. Like how many actors popped in from other shows that I know, obviously are quite high on this, because that's just normal for TV, is that a lot of these actors do guest roles in different shows. But the fact that there's been a good number of people on this show at this point who have guest starred, who I've known from something from my childhood. April O'Neil from Turtles 2 being, a big one. But Kevin McAllister's dad popped in. But there's been a few. I'd have to go back and check which ones there were, but fun. The last like 5-10 minutes of this were pretty exceptional and really hit on lots of things. We see Root Root takes Shaw away to go and do a mission, but then sends Shaw back to the others. It's mainly just a comedy beat. It keeps Shaw away from the others for the first half of the episode, and we get the reveal that the bar that they're in Miami is actually full of unconscious people because they've been cleaning up bad guys, and they're all just laid out on the bar floor. So that's, it's an amusing little scene. It kind of breaks up stuff. It's funny because like the show obviously has this dry wit to it often, especially from Reese and Shaw. Like it does that a lot with them. And I think this episode, because of how heavy the last 10 minutes feels, it felt like it was really nice to have a lot of that dry wit throughout. Just simple little things. When Reese is like first pretending to be a Secret Service agent, he offers to shoot the congressman in the leg so he can get out of the opera. But even that feeds into a little moment earlier on where Reese was complaining about the opera music that Finch was playing in the car. So there's just like a fun couple of little running gags early on in the episode that just, they're there to kind of lighten the mood and sort of make you feel like comfortable before they hurt your, well, they don't hurt you that bad. This isn't like when Carter died. That really hurt. But like this is hurt you fairly bad in terms of like, oh, we're going to get serious. We're going to treat something like a big deal at the end. We're going to see Finch really struggle with a decision, and all that stuff early on just kind of, it almost lowers your guard a little bit. Even though in the back of my head on a meta level, I'm thinking, oh, we're getting near the end of the season. It feels like the ending of this one could have a big deal because it's going to, because what are they going to do? Completely stop Decima 3 episodes before the end of the season? That seems highly unlikely. But that's me thinking with my meta brain. I'm thinking of like writing a TV show and how many episodes are left, as opposed to what the episode inside internally is just presenting to me as the story. And I can't turn that part of my brain off, of course. So I'm not surprised it got heavier by the end. I kind of expected it to, but it did surprise me in like what it did. I was not expecting it to become this debate of we should step in and kill this congressman. And the fact that they didn't is also very interesting. I kind of glossed over that actually. So it reveals that he's not dead, right? So Reese never killed him, right? And we've had a few episodes of this show where we've had kind of a did Reese kill this guy or not kind of moments, right? And they sort of, there was a couple of great big moments in season 1 that did that. And here, one, it's kind of heartwarming, the idea that maybe he couldn't do it because Finch had made enough of a compelling argument, or whatever the reason is that he decided not to, right? Assuming he did decide not to and he wasn't just interrupted. It didn't seem like he was. It seemed like the congressman was knocked out before they left, so he could have just done it if he wanted to. But now that he hasn't done it, when whatever happens next happens because he's still alive, what are the consequences of that in terms of Reese's like perception of the machine, or not even the machine, but of his teammates, of Finch, of what's going to happen now, and maybe we get a better context later on for what the mission actually wanted from that situation. Because it might not have been his death. I mean, that's something. I mean, you could argue that they leaped to that conclusion, and maybe that's worth debating in its own right. Is the fact that that's the only other option here? But I mean, he does make a compelling argument, to be fair. But given all the bad things that might now happen in the next few episodes, I'd be curious to see. Now, it is worth mentioning that the government have only granted Decima access to the surveillance stuff from New York for a short period of time. I think they say at the end 24 hours. So this is going to be like a taster, right? I mean, it's literally in the show a taster for the government so that they know that they want to like fund this and use it. But it's a taster for us because it's like we get to see how dangerous it is before it's actually just completely open and unleashed and at full power. It's just like so the next episode I expect to be very exciting because I expect it to be an episode where Samaritan are hunting down Finch. So it's actually bad guys who have got a number effectively, and our good guys are going to have to try and protect the number. And they're both probably going to be looking for him. I can't imagine that Reese and Shaw aren't going to be trying to find Finch next episode. Obviously, there was no Fusco this episode, which is totally fine. Like, there was a lot going on, a lot to get through. It makes sense that some characters sometimes have to take an episode off. But, no, good stuff. Yeah, as far as, the early stuff, there's a couple of, it does a lot of that person of interest thing where it's, like, making you, like, either doubt or suspect if the person is a good or a bad guy, and just little things like, oh, he's nice to the homeless people, like, oh, he seems like he's pissed off a union leader, but no, he's actually sort of like making things better for them in the future, but he's like talking them through the fact that they have to accept a crappy deal now because they'll get a better deal next year. It's kind of, it's like, it keeps doing this sort of the scales kind of thing of like, oh, is he a good guy? Is he kind of a crappy politician? He's cheating on his wife, but his wife kind of knows about it and doesn't really care because they're in kind of a, I think the way Finch puts it is they're in more of an arrangement than they are in a marriage, per se. And it's all just kind of treated with this, like, it's almost like he's trying to keep us on our toes as to whether or not he is a good guy or a bad guy. And even when it turns out that he has accepted some, like, information which is effectively bribes from Decima to help put this bill through, it's not like he knows exactly what it is or understands the complete, he doesn't have the full picture of how dangerous Samaritan is and what it actually means. Finch tries to explain that to him, of course, and how it could be abused and how it could be infinitely abused and the power struggle will be immense. But he didn't really necessarily know that when he's making the decision. And even now, it's fair to say that he just doesn't believe how big a deal it is. That he is just hand-waving it and saying, oh, you're overreacting, you're making a fuss, because everyone always makes a fuss when these things are coming up, but they always calm down. Like, that's how he's hand-waving it away, which also feels very, real world, actually. It's people just hand-waving things away and saying, nah, it's not that big a deal. Yeah, maybe it is. Right? But even then, Finch is kind of sticking up and saying, look, he's not necessarily a villain here, right? He's a bit of a shitty politician who's like lining his own pockets, but he's not. He doesn't necessarily understand exactly what he's doing or what he's letting happen. Which it was his own discussion to be had, but it's I think it really keeps us on his on our toes, and I think the episode does a decent job of making him seem likable enough despite any flaws, which makes it. It makes it interesting when the debate to kill him comes up, because I think it's like, okay, he's effectively doing this bad thing, or he's helping the bad guys by doing this thing. But he's also likable enough that I don't think the audience is just rooting for his death. I think the writing here is trying to walk a tightrope, and it's a really fine line of making us completely understand logically why he maybe should die, but also making us feel like we should feel bad about it if he does die. Right, and not just because it's corrupting the soul of Reese or whoever shoots him, but it's kind of like he's likable enough, right? So it wants us to feel conflicted about him, so that when this decision comes, it's hard to like pick a side when the characters are debating. And I think that's the genius of the writing, is that as they're both making their arguments, they're both making compelling points, and there's no completely right or wrong. Because as much as I'm kind of happy that the ethical, the moral side of the argument seems to have won out by not killing him, I'm also now dreading the consequences of not killing him, because really bad things might happen because of Samaritan. So now I suspect they might stop Samaritan by the end of the season from becoming fully online, but what turmoil do we go through to get to there? That's the big question. So yeah, that was a very good episode of Person of Interest. I am delighted to be back. So thank you for joining me. You can let me know what you thought of this episode in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all the usual stuff, and of course you can support all the content over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and get some bonuses for your trouble, particularly for all the movie podcasts. Go check out MailFuzz Movies for the 3 movie podcast shows that are over there. But that is me, so thank you once again for joining. I do appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?